Nigeria's Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, has repeated that Nigeria will not be restructuring its debt. And that's at the public presentation of the 2023 budget, which was estimated to at about 20.5 trillion naira. That's for next year. Zainab noted that crude oil production challenges and subsidy for petrol products deductions by the NNPC constitute significant threat to the achievements of Nigeria's revenue growth. Let's take a listen.
And it was approved. In the 2023 budget, we had assumed that PMS subsidy will remain up to the middle of 2023, based on the 18 months extension that was announced by government early 2022. In this regard, only 3.36 trillion has been provided for PMS subsidy for the year 2023. So total revenue that will be available to fund the 2023 budget is estimated at 9.73 trillion naira. This includes gross revenue of 63 government-owned enterprises that is proposed at 3.48 trillion. Of this, the federal government oil revenue share is projected to be 1.92 trillion, while non-oil taxes are estimated at 2.43 trillion, and federal government independent revenues are projected to be at 2.21 trillion. The 2022 aggregate federal government expenditure, inclusive of government-owned enterprises and project-tied loans, is projected to be 20.51 trillion naira. And this is 18.4% higher than the amended 2022 budget. The recurrent non-debt spending estimated to amount to, so this is salaries and pensions, is estimated to be at 8.49 trillion, inclusive of 20 billion social investment fund. The aggregate capital expenditure of 5.34 trillion is 26% of the total expenditure. At 6.31 trillion, debt service is 30.8% of total expenditure. This is 71.2% higher than the 2022 estimate, as it includes interest of 1.1 trillion for the Ways and Means from the Central Bank of Nigeria. Overall, the budget deficit is 10.78 trillion for 2023, and this represents 4.78% of GDP. Again, this is higher than the 3% that is set by the Fiscal Responsibility Act. But the same Fiscal Responsibility Act has allowed the President to increase the 3% to GDP threshold if, in the opinion of the President, that the economy is going through an emergency. The budget deficit is to be financed mainly by domestic borrowing as well as foreign borrowing. Domestic borrowing at 7.04 trillion, while foreign borrowing is at 1.76 trillion. Nigeria's public debt maturity profile is within the limits set by the debt management strategy. The total debt portfolio of our country today is at $102 billion. Of the total debt size, 35% is foreign, 65% is domestic. The majority of Nigeria's debt is domestic debt, and this limits our foreign exchange differential exposure. We've also worked over time under the debt management strategy to rebalance our portfolio to longer tenured loans as opposed to shorter tenured loans. Debt service to revenue ratio has been of great concern to everybody in the country. So while our total debt stock today is 25%, and we have got approval by His Excellency the President to include the borrowing from the Central Bank Ways and Means. Even when we add that, the debt stock will be at 35%. We have set for ourselves a maximum debt limit of 40% of GDP. Today, the total public debt as a percentage of GDP stands at 23.06% as of June 2022. Nigeria is not planning on restructuring its debt. as it remains within healthy limits, and also we remain committed to meeting our domestic obligations. The problem we have is in the revenue side, because our debt service to revenue is putting a lot of pressures on the operations of government. Let me just report on some of the critical sectoral allocations in the 2023 budget, and the details again will be posted on the website of the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, as well as the Budget Office of the Federation. So for the education sector, there's an aggregate provision of 2.05 trillion.
All right, Nigeria is looking to enhance its budget's comprehensiveness and transparency. So the country's budget now includes all projects funded by bilateral and multilateral loans, donor fund programs, and revenue expenditure of 63 major government-owned enterprises. At the ministerial presentation of the 2023 appropriations reeled out today, let's take a listen to Ben Akabweze, who is the Director General at the Budget Office.
The said improvements include the following. One, significantly enhanced use of technology in the budget process, including service-wide implementation of the GIFMIS budget preparation system. This has minimized errors in the budget and facilitated timely passage of the budget, thus enabling a sustained return to a predictable January to December fiscal year. In this regard, of course, we have enjoyed strong cooperation from the National Assembly. Two, in a bid to enhance budget comprehensiveness and transparency, the FGN's budget now includes all projects funded by bilateral/multilateral loans, donor-funded programs/projects, as well as the revenues and expenditures of 63 major government-owned enterprises/regulatory agencies. 3, enhanced and timely availability of budget-related information to the public through the Budget Office and Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning websites, as well as responsiveness to freedom of information requests. This has facilitated greater public participation in the budget process. Number 4, strategic refocusing of the budget to the revenue side thereof, rather than a mere statement of expenditure proposals. This led to a redesign of the appropriation bill to include both revenue and expenditure estimates, and has contributed to the substantial growth in non-oil revenue performance recorded. A new performance management framework for government-owned enterprises was introduced to support this effort. Number 5, 3 years ago, we introduced the enactment of annual finance acts to keep our fiscal policies like laws up to date and support the implementation of the annual budgets. This was the first time since the return to democratic governance in 1999. These improvements have been validated by the significant improvements in FGN's public expenditure and fiscal accountability review ratings by the World Bank. Nigeria's 2021 Open Budget Index scores on fiscal transparency and accountability also reflected significant improvements, with Nigeria ranked among the top 2 reformers. We nevertheless keep striving for continuous improvements in the FGN budget process. For instance, we will shortly be launching the National Budget Portal that will be a one-stop access point for information about the budgets of the federal, state, and local governments. And this will enable more accurate reports about Nigeria's national expenditure on key sectors like health and education.